All right, guys, so we're going to continue chapter 17. Let's finish the last part up. My phone ran out of data. So, Mr. Lee, who is the servant of Kathy and her husband, I think Adam. Kathy is pregnant. The gentleman, Samuel, the good man who's able to dig wells. He's a really hard worker. He has two sons he took with him to Adam Trask and Kathy's land because Adam Trask hired him to find water, build some wells, and do some other construction. So they're there working. Mr. Lee is the Chinese servant of Mr. Trask. He went to go get Samuel to help him deliver the baby for Kathy. And so at the end, when the video stopped, it was Mr. Lee he continues asking Samuel, "What do you want to say?" Lee asked for a third time. "I want my wife," Samuel cried. "No dreams, no ghosts, no foolishness. I want her here. They say miners take canaries into the pits to test the air. Liza has no truck with foolishness. And Lee, if Liza sees a ghost, it's a ghost and not a fragment of a dream. If Liza feels trouble, we'll bar the doors." Lee got up and went to the laundry basket and looked down at the babies. He had to peer close for the light was going fast. "They're sleeping," he said. Oh yeah, so Kathy actually had twins, but Kathy's saying she doesn't want the babies. "They'll be squalling soon enough. Lee, will you hitch up the rig and drive to my place for Liza? Tell her I need her here. If Tom's still there, tell him to mind the place. If not, I'll send him in the morning. And if Liza doesn't want to come, tell her we need a woman's hand here and a woman's clear eyes. She'll know what you mean." "I'll do it," said Lee. "Maybe we're scaring each other like two children in the dark." "I've thought of that," Samuel said. "And Lee, tell her I hurt my hand at the wellhead. Do not, for God's sake, tell her how it happened." Yeah, Kathy bit his hand. "I'll get some lamps lit and then I'll go," said Lee. "It will be a great relief to have her here." "That it will, Lee, that it will. She'll let some light into this cellar hole." After Lee drove away in the dark, Samuel picked up a lamp in his left hand. He had to set it on the floor to turn the knob of the bedroom door. The room was in pitch blackness and the yellow lamplight streamed upward and did not light the bed. Kathy's voice came strong and edged from the bed. "Shut the door. I do not want the light." "Adam, go out. I want to be in the dark, alone." Adam said hoarsely, "I want to stay with you." "I do not want you." "I will stay." "Then stay, but don't talk anymore. Please close the door and take the lamp away." Samuel went back to the living room. He put the lamp on the table by the laundry basket and looked in on the small sleeping faces of the babies. Their eyes were pinched shut and they sniffled a little in discomfort at the light. Samuel put his forefinger down and stroked the hot foreheads. One of the twins opened his mouth and yawned prodigiously and settled back to sleep. Samuel moved the lamp and then went to the front door and opened it and stepped outside. The evening star was so bright that it seemed to flare and crumple as it sank toward the western mountains. The air was still and Samuel could smell the day-heated sage. The night was very dark. Samuel started when he heard a voice speaking out of the blackness. "How is she? Who is it?" Samuel demanded. "It's me, Rabbit." The man emerged and took form in the light from the doorway. "The mother, Rabbit? Oh, she's fine." Lee said twins. "That's right, twin sons. You couldn't want better. I guess Mr. Trask will tear the river up by the roots now. He'll bring in a crop of candy canes." Selma didn't know why he changed the subject. "Rabbit, do you know what we bored into today?" "A meteorite." "What's that, Mr. Hamilton?" "A shooting star that fell 1,000,000 years ago." "You did? Well, think of that. How did you hurt your hand?" "I almost said on a shooting star," Samuel laughed, "but it wasn't that interesting. I pinched it in the tackle." "Bad?" "No, not bad." But keeps covering up for Kathy. "Two boys," said Rabbit. "My old lady will be jealous. Will you come inside and sit, Rabbit?" "No, no, thank you. I'll get out to sleep. Morning seems to come earlier every year I live." "That it does, Rabbit. Good night, then." Liza Hamilton arrived about 4 in the morning. Samuel was asleep in his chair, dreaming that he had gripped a red-hot bar of iron and could not let go. Liza awakened him and looked at his hand before she even glanced at the babies. While she did well the things he had done in a lumbering, masculine way, she gave him his orders and packed him off. He was to get up this instant, saddle doxology, and ride straight to King City. No matter what time it was, he must wake up that good-for-nothing doctor and get his hand treated. If it seemed all right, he could go home and wait, and it was a criminal thing to leave your last born, and he little more than a baby himself, sitting there by a hole in the ground with no one to care for him. It was a matter which might even engage the attention of the Lord God himself. If Samuel craved realism and activity, he got it. She had him off the place by dawn. His hand was bandaged by 11, and he was in his own chair at his own table by 5 in the afternoon, sizzling with fever, and Tom was boiling a hen to make chicken soup for him. For 3 days Samuel lay in bed fighting the fever phantoms and putting names to them too, before his great strength broke down the infection and drove it caterwauling away. Samuel looked up at Tom with clear eyes and said, "I'll have to get up," tried it, and sat weakly back, chuckling, the sound he made when any force in the world defeated him. He had an idea that even when beaten he could steal a little victory by laughing at defeat, and Tom brought him chicken soup until he wanted to kill him. The lore has not died out of the world, and you will still find people who believe that soup will cure any hurt or illness, and is no bad thing to have for the funeral either. Liza stayed away a week. She cleaned the trash house from the top clear down into the grain of the wooden floors. She washed everything she could bend enough to get into a tub and sponged the rest. She put the babies on a working basis and noted with satisfaction that they howled most of the time and began to gain weight. Lee she used like a slave since she didn't quite believe in him. Adam she ignored since she couldn't use him for anything. She did make him wash the windows and then did it again after he had finished. Liza sat with Kathy just enough to come to the conclusion that she was a sensible girl who didn't talk very much or try to teach her grandmother to suck eggs. She also checked her over and found that she was perfectly healthy, not injured and not sick, and that she would never nurse the twins. And just as well, too, she said, those great Lamoxes would chew a little thing like you to the bone. She forgot that she was smaller than Kathy and had nursed every one of her own children. On Saturday afternoon, Liza checked her work, left a list of instructions as long as her arm to cover every possibility, from colic to an inroad of grease ants, packed her traveling basket, and had Lee drive her home. She found her house a stable of filth and abomination, and she set to cleaning it with the violence and disgust of a Hercules at labor. Samuel asked questions of her in flight. How were the babies? They were fine, growing. How was Adam? Well, he moved around as if he was alive, but he left no evidence. The Lord in his wisdom gave money to very curious people, perhaps because they'd starve without. How was Mrs. Trask? Quiet, lackadaisical, like most rich Eastern women. Liza had never known a rich Eastern woman, but on the other hand, docile and respectful. And it's a strange thing, Liza said. I can find no real fault with her, save perhaps a touch of laziness, and yet I don't like her very much. Maybe it's that scar. How did she get it? I don't know, said Samuel. Liza leveled her forefinger like a pistol between his eyes. I'll tell you something. Unbeknownst to herself, she puts a spell on her husband. He moons around her like a sick duck. I don't think he's given the twins a thorough good look yet. Samuel waited until she went by again. He said, well, if she's lazy and he's moony, who's going to take care of the sweet babies? Twin boys take a piece of looking after. Liza stopped in mid-swoop, drew a chair close to him, and sat resting her hands on her knees. Remember, I've never held the truth lightly. If you don't believe me, she said. I don't think you could lie, dearie, he said, and she smiled, thinking it a compliment. Well, what I'm to tell you might weigh a little heavy on your belief if you did not know that. Tell me, Samuel, you know that Chinese with his slanty eyes and his outlandish talk and that braid? Lee? Sure I know him. Well, wouldn't you say offhand he was a heathen? I don't know. Come on, Samuel. Anybody would. But he's not. She straightened up. What is he? She tapped his arm with an iron finger. A Presbyterian, and well up, I say, when you dig it out of that crazy talk. Now, what do you think of that? Samuel's voice was unsteady with trying to clamp his laughter in. No, he said, and I say yes. Well, now, who do you think is looking after the twins? I wouldn't trust a heathen from here to Omega. But a Presbyterian, he learned everything I told him. No wonder they're taking on weight, said Samuel. Oh, no wonder they're taking on weight, said Samuel. It's a matter for praise and it's a matter for prayer. We'll do it too, said Samuel. Both. Mr. Lee's funny. For a week, Kathy rested and gathered her strength. On Saturday of the second week of October, she stayed in her bedroom all morning. Adam tried the door and found it locked. I'm busy, she called, and he went away. Putting her bureau in order, he thought, for he could hear her opening drawers and closing them. In the late afternoon, Lee came to Adam where he sat on the stoop. Missy say I go King City buy nursery bottle, he said uneasily. Well, do it then, said Adam. She's your mistress. Miss say not come back maybe Monday. I think Kathy's bailing. Kathy spoke calmly from the doorway. He hasn't had a day off for a long time. A rest would do him good. Of course, said Adam. I just didn't think of it. Have a good time. If I need anything, I'll get one of the carpenters. Man, go home Sunday. I'll get the Indian. Lopez will help. Lee felt Kathy's eyes on him. Lopez drunk. Fine bottle whiskey. Lee looked at Kathy standing in the doorway. He lowered his eyelids. Maybe I come back late, he said, and he thought he saw two dark lines appear between her eyes and then disappear. He turned away. Goodbye, he said. Kathy went back to her room as the evening came down. At 7:30, Adam knocked. "I've got you some supper, dear. It's not much." The door opened as though she had been standing waiting. She was dressed in her neat traveling dress, the jacket edged in black braid, black velvet lapels, and large jet buttons. On her head was a wide straw hat with a tiny crown. Long jet beaded hat pins held it on. Anna's mouth dropped open. She gave him no chance to speak. "I'm going away now." "Kathy, what do you mean? I told you before." You didn't listen. It doesn't matter." "I don't believe you." Her voice was dead and metallic. "I don't give a damn what you believe. I'm going. The babies? Throw them in one of your wells." He cried in panic. "Kathy, you're sick. You can't go. Not from me. Not from me. I can do anything to you. Any woman can do anything to you. You're a fool." Oh, fuck. Throw the babies in the well? "I can do anything to you. Any woman can do anything to you. You're a fool." The word got through his haze. Without warning, his hands reached for her shoulders, and he thrust her backward. As she staggered, he took the key from the inside of the door, slammed the door shut, and locked it. He stood panting, his ears close to the panel, and a hysterical sickness poisoned him. He could hear her moving quietly about. A drawer was open, and the thought leaped in him, "She's going to stay." And then there was a little click he could not place. His ear was almost touching the door. Her voice came from so near that he jerked his head back. He heard richness in her voice. "Dear," she said softly, "I didn't know you would take it so. I'm sorry, Adam." She was going to stay, and then there was a little click he could not place. She shot herself, I think. Her voice came from so near that he jerked his head back. He heard richness in her voice. "Dear," she said softly, "I didn't know you would take it so. I'm sorry, Adam." His breath burst hoarsely out of his throat. His hand trembled, trying to turn the key, and it fell out on the floor after he had turned it. He pushed the door open. She stood 3 feet away. In her right hand she held his .44 Colt, and the black hole in the barrel pointed at him. He took a step toward her, saw that the hammer was back. She shot him. The heavy slug struck him in the shoulder, flattened, and tore out a piece of his shoulder blade. The flash and roar smothered him, and he staggered back and fell to the floor. She moved slowly toward him, cautiously as she might toward a wounded animal. He stared up into her eyes, which inspected him impersonally. He stared up into her eyes, which inspected him impersonally. She tossed the pistol on the floor beside him and walked out of the house. He heard her steps on the porch, on the crisp, dry oak leaves on the path, and then he could hear her no more. And the monotonous sound that had been there all along was the cry of the twins, wanting their dinner. He had forgotten to feed them. So she didn't kill him, she just shot him in the shoulder. But who knows, I mean, if he could get to a doctor, I don't think he'll die. Anyway, fuck. Peace.